What's up, guys? It's me, Alan. I'm back with another video. It is closing in on 1:30 in the morning. I am filming my NBA playoff predictions now, and I will have them up after I get up, in what, maybe 6, 7 hours or so, for before I go to work. Um the Pelicans beat the Clippers just a little while ago to take the eighth spot in the Western Conference playoffs, which means the playoffs are officially set. And I've got some very interesting predictions here. So, with all that being said, I hope you'll enjoy. Please make sure to drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you don't miss out on future uploads. I'm almost at 600 subs. I'm closing in. Please help me get there. I'd appreciate it. And let's go ahead and let's jump into this. So, I think with First of all, congratulations to both the Atlanta Hawks and New Orleans Pelicans for making it out of the play-in and into the actual playoff bracket. Um, and in terms of the playoffs itself, there are some very, very interesting matchups all throughout the bracket, and it's going to shape up for what I think will be one of the wildest playoffs we've seen in a while, just because of the quality of some of these matchups. So let's kick it off with the Eastern Conference, starting off with the top seeded Miami Heat going up against the eighth seeded Atlanta Hawks. Now, Clint Capella got hurt against the Cavs earlier tonight. We don't know the extent of that injury. So first of all, prayers out to Capella. Hope he's okay. Hope he'll be all right. Um, but losing him and already not having John Collins right now is a big deal for the Hawks, which means they're going to have to put a lot on the back of Trae Young. But Trae Young knows how to turn it on, and there are other players on that team that can do well as well. The thing with Miami is that they managed to get the 1 seed despite being a team that had a lot of dysfunction, especially surrounding Jimmy Butler going into the late stage of the season. And if they don't get that dysfunction figured out, it's going to come back to bite them in the playoffs. And for as rare as this is, I think it's possible. All things considered, I think it can be done. I have the Hawks taking the Heat 7 games, and I'm taking the upset alert. Hawks advance to the second round, 4 games to 3. Um, again, it no disrespect to the Heat, but if you guys don't get the dysfunction out of the locker room, if Butler can't figure it out, some of these other players can't figure it out, then you're going home early, in my opinion. I mean, and that's the other thing too, is that they were like a few wins away from not, because like they finished with 53 wins. Boston, Milwaukee, and Philly tied for second with 51 wins apiece. Um, so like if each of those teams wins another game or two and Miami loses a game or two down the stretch, Miami's not even the 1 seed. Like they could be third facing Chicago, fourth facing Toronto, give or take. I mean, that's the thing. So as far as I'm concerned, Miami, get your shit figured out, and you could advance. But I'm taking the Hawks for the upset alert. And speaking of the Raptors, they are the fifth seed going up against the fourth seeded Philadelphia 76ers, rekindling that old playoff rivalry. Of course, 76er fans are probably still having nightmares of the Kawhi Leonard shot from a few years ago. And the key thing entering this series is what James Harden is Philly going to get. He's been dealing with hamstring issues. And while Joel Embiid has been playing like a potential MVP, and I'd argue it's either him or Jokic that should get it. No offense to Giannis, but it should be either Jokic or Embiid. Um, The thing is, if James Harden isn't playing up to James Harden standards, Joel is not going to be able to get it all done by himself. Now, granted, they have other players on that roster that can do well, but they'll be missing one of them when they go up to Toronto, Matisse Thybulle, due to Canada's COVID stuff, and I believe Thybulle isn't vaccinated. So there's that to think about as well. And I think Toronto, if without in the games without Thybulle, and on their home floor, and just in general with Harden being Harden and him needing to show up in the playoffs, but he doesn't. Excuse me, but he doesn't always do that. I think Toronto will take advantage, and Philly gets booted in the first round, 4 games to 2. And it'll be interesting to see what happens next, in the offseason for them. But I have Toronto moving on to take on Atlanta. Then Bucks Bulls, the 3v6 matchup. Um, I'm just gonna say it. I have the Bucks winning in 5. I want this series to go longer, but Chicago has not, as of late, hasn't shown me that they can do that. Like them and Cleveland were shockingly two of the best teams in the league, and then we get towards the trade deadline and they're still up there, but injuries and otherwise kind of just piled on. I think Chicago, once Lonzo Ball got hurt, I don't think Chicago has really been the same since. I don't think the Vucevic trade has necessarily worked out that great for them. Like it has and it hasn't to a point. Like I don't think Vucevic has been the player that they thought they were getting when they traded for him a couple years ago. And I just don't think it's their year yet. Their time is coming. Chicago has something brewing there. You just have to make sure you bring back Levine. If you fail to bring him back, you're fucked. Just saying, Chicago. And then the big matchup of the Eastern Conference first round, Boston and Brooklyn. Who boy. Of course, Brooklyn had to get out of the play-in, and they did. Kyrie's able to play home games. KD is KD. Um, but Boston has been something else. Like for the longest time, for part of the season, us Celtics fans thought Boston was going to end up in the play-in. They were going to end up as like a 6, a 7, or an 8 seed, something like that. That with the way they were playing, they have been something else for I don't know how long now in terms of games to where they ended up with the second seed in a 3-way tie at the same record. But Brooklyn's no slouch, obviously. When Katie and Kyrie are playing at their best, they are very hard to stop. And that's why people dreaded them with Harden, because if all 3 players were playing at their best, who the fuck stops that team? I'm going out on a limb, and I'm going to take Boston in 7. I feel like Tatum and Brown and the rest of the team, they're gonna have something to prove. And after how their season started, the midway point, things like that, all of this momentum that they've got going in is big for them. And I think it's what's going to help them just edge out the Nets, especially if they can get Robert Williams back. And there's no guarantee he'll be back for game 1, although he has been in the gym, he has been working out, so there's a chance. I think it's more likely he's back for maybe game 2 or 3, but either way, having him back will be fucking huge. Granted, they were able to play extremely well without him and won most of the games that they played after he got hurt. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, so entering the second round in the East, I have Hawks Raptors and Celtics Bucks. We will get to that momentarily. For now, we will take a look at the first round of the Western Conference bracket, starting with the top seeded Phoenix Suns against the New Orleans Pelicans. I have the Suns advancing in 5. No shame here. It's just how it goes. But congrats to the Pelicans for getting here. And because of you guys making the playoffs, Portland doesn't get your pick. Charlotte does. So Portland, y'all are still screwed. Then we have Dallas and Utah, and the key thing for this series is, well, there's two key things. One, the coexistence of Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert in Utah, and two, Luka Doncic in Dallas. From what I've seen as of late, he's not playing game one. He's doubtful for game two. The longer Dallas doesn't have Luka, um, the worse off they're gonna be. I have the Jazz winning the series in six, and it's in large part because of that. If Dallas has Doncic from the off, then I absolutely believe Dallas can win this series. But for now, I have Utah in six, and they'll get to go meet Phoenix in the next round. Then you have the Warriors and Nuggets, and I feel bad for Denver because they're not at full strength. And like Jokic has been putting up MVP esque solid numbers on a actual sixth seeded team, but he still doesn't have Jamal Murray back from his injury, previous, and he doesn't have Michael Porter Jr. So without them, it's been the Jokic show over there, and they're going up against a Warriors team that most likely will have Steph Curry back for game one. Not to mention they do, they have Green, they have Thompson, they have all these guys. It's I think Denver can take this series 6 games at least, but I do have Golden State advancing. Um, but imagine what this matchup would be if both teams were at full strength. This would be like a conference finals worthy matchup. But Jokic, he can do a lot. He's just not going to be able to get it all done by himself trying to eliminate the Warriors. So I have the Warriors advancing. And then the final matchup, Memphis and Minnesota. By the way, congratulations to Minnesota on making the playoffs for the first time in a while. Um, they're going to have a bit of a tough time against the Grizzlies. However, if Klay Thompson can play like Klay Thompson and not fucking, foul out of games and play like shit, like he did against the Clippers in the play-in game, then the Timberwolves with him at his best alongside Anthony Edwards at his best, D'Angelo Russell at his best, they're going to be hard to beat playing Memphis. But Memphis has John Morant. They got Jaren Jackson Jr. They're a very good team in of themselves. And I have Memphis advancing in six. Although, again, if Minnesota has all their guys playing up to their best, I wouldn't be surprised if Minnesota pulls the upset off. But I have Memphis in six here. So now we take a look at the second round. Your West second round, Phoenix versus Utah, Memphis versus Golden State. We'll get to that in a moment. Um, Raptors, Hawks, Celtics, Bucks. I have the Raptors beating the Hawks in six. It's going to be another thing where Trae Young's going to have to show up every game and play his best. At this point, you would think maybe they'll have Capella back either by the late stage of the Miami series or at least for the beginning of this series. But it's still not going to be enough. And Toronto will get the job done here, I believe. And go back to the conference finals, which would be neat. And then Celtics Bucks. This is a conference finals worthy matchup. Between the defending champion and a team that, again, the way I see it, I feel like Boston they just have something to prove. They have a lot of momentum. They'll get more momentum from beating the Nets in the first round. And I think they're going to parlay that momentum into another 7-game series victory over Milwaukee. Two of the biggest challengers in the East, and they knock them out back to back. That would be incredible. Setting up a Celtics Raptors final, Eastern Conference final. In the West, Phoenix gets by Utah in 5 games. I think Utah will be decent, but they're not going to put up enough of a challenge to take Phoenix out. And then I have the Warriors defeating the Grizzlies in 7 games. John Co are going to push as hard as possible. It's just not your time yet. It's getting there. But against Steph, he's going to be hard to beat. So I have the Warriors headed to the conference finals to take Phoenix on. So, that said, Boston, Toronto, Phoenix, Golden State in the conference finals. Who wins? Well, in the East, I have Boston um, taking the Raptors out in 6 games. What can I say? All the momentum in the world, Tatum and Brown and Smart and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody playing up to their best, night in and night out, taking out back-to-back top challengers, both in the Nets and the Bucks. They take on another great team in the Raptors and beat them, and head back to the NBA Finals for the first time since the late 2000s. That would simply be incredible, um, and long overdue for this Celtics team. On the West side, Phoenix and Golden State. I think this series is going to go deep, but I have Phoenix taking Golden State out in 6, not 7, but 6 games. Um, and so therefore, Devin Booker, Chris Paul, and the Phoenix Suns will get to take on Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and the Boston Celtics in the NBA Finals. Who would have thought back at the trade deadline that this would be the matchup we were getting? I mean, Phoenix in the finals makes sense. Boston in the finals? If you were to tell a Celtics fan that back at the trade deadline, you would be laughed at. But here we are, Phoenix and Boston in the finals, and I do have the Suns winning in 7 games. If I had to predict who Finals MVP would be in that matchup, probably Devin Booker. I mean, unless Chris Paul manages to pull it off, but either way, for Phoenix, it's about finishing what they started last year, getting to the finals and getting beat by Milwaukee, coming oh so close to giving Chris Paul his first ring, a long overdue and deserved finals ring. And this year, they get it done. And for Boston, if Boston can survive the Nets in the first round, I think that will be an accomplishment in of itself for this team, for what this team's been through throughout the season and how much of a turnaround they've had in the Eastern Conference with teams like Chicago and Cleveland getting hurt and falling off. Brooklyn not having Kyrie for a lot of the season because he couldn't play home games. And then KD being out with injury at points in time. Um, Miami's dysfunction, Philly being Philly, things like that. Um, but to get past both the Nets and the Bucks and then get to the finals, that would be a hell of a ride for the Celtics. And even if they don't win, it just shows that they can get there. They can get there. Um, and it shows that what it will also show is not to break up Tatum and Brown necessarily. I think you can restructure a bit of the personnel around them, but don't break that duo up. Not yet, because they're out to prove that they can win together, and they've done a lot of that, and that's been a big catalyst of the turnaround this season. So, with that all being said, thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I will catch y'all next time. Peace.